we actually have footage. My guys were spraying a home, the perimeter of the vegetation, and the wind's blowing everywhere. And like there are palm trees, like everything's igniting, and everyone's seen the footages. But we have footage, and I'll try to remind Vincent to plug this in, where there's a home literally on fire, and then it just leans over and
Yeah.
just ignites the next one, and it's like there's so much. You're right, right? There's so much fuel there.
Welcome to the All Things Wildfire podcast, where we delve into the latest trends and hot topics in protecting properties against wildfire. So sit back, relax, and join us as we arm you against disaster.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of All Things Wildfire. Today we have Mr. Paul Brady with Green Shield, and today we're going to be talking about, and so if you take notes, I would want you to take notes, really consider the insurability issue that we're having, not only in California, but Colorado and all over the place. This issue that we're having is actually worldwide, but locally, Paul's got some things that you're going to want to take notes on, and some breakthroughs for us to really understand what the insurability looks like specifically here in California, and then that will go on to other states that follow suit. So, Paul, thank you for joining us, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And thank you, OP, thank you for having me. Everybody who's listening, appreciate being on the show.
Awesome. Thank you. And Paul, I'm going to just jump in to some things, and then you can kind of fill in some of the details. Let me do this just so we can prep the listeners. Tell us what your company does before I jump into some specific questions, because I already know your product and I know your what you guys are all about.
Yeah, definitely. So for the listeners, so the company that I'm with is called Green Shield. So Green Shield Holdings is actually two things. You have Property Guardian, which is a very analytics, very science driven, as well as you have real world experience. So my background comes from the fire service, but the majority of my career in the fire service. And so you have those things where we are really focused on one thing, and that's making the world more insurable. Focus on mitigation, because mitigation is what we can all do actually to harden our properties when it comes to wildfire risk. And we actually feed these analytics to the insurance industry. So we feed these analytics to the insurance industry, and they utilize our product for two things: for risk selection. So that it does get utilized for risk selection, but it also gets utilized for loss control. Some of it's active loss control. We have a product that shows where a fire is going to go and intersects it with the portfolio. We have other stuff where we ignite wildfires around the property and kind of show where best mitigation would be. And then we also have other products that are even kind of outside the insurance sector, which would be in our insurable product, which is more in the real estate market. And that's really kind of looking at the insurability of homes as you're buying the home or as you're selling the home. What is the insurability of it, and how can we actually help with that? Because the whole point is insurance. The big deal is actually getting insurance. It's not so much, what are all the mitigation things you can do? That's great, but in the end, after you do all those mitigation things, you want to make sure that it actually leads to some type of insurance. And that's what the insurable product really is. As you're buying or selling, it just kind of highlights certain things that would be good for you to do, and what the insurance market's going to be kind of looking at. When it comes to the other side of the business, that's going to be our MGA, a managing general agent, and that's we're insuring homes within the state of California, in the state of as well as Colorado, from $1 million to $10 million homes, if you will, and it really is on the E&S plan. And what that means is you have three separate things. You have the admitted market, which is kind of like the best insurance you can get because it's governed by the California Department of Insurance. And then if you can't find insurance there, then you go into the E&S market. And that's where we play. And that's where we're able to actually insure homes today. And we have insured homes today. We have homeowners that have our insurance in California as well as Colorado. And then you have the FAIR plan, which is going to be that
Bah,
last
bah,
ditch
bah,
effort.
bah.
Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
my gosh.
The one that everybody loves.
Oh no.
I'm just kidding.
So like, thank you, Paul. Like, you guys do a lot. And so, okay, while we're on that topic, uh, so the E&S market is different from the admitted market, right? So the admitted market goes through all these qualifications and they have to abide by a bunch of rules in California or different states. Um, but the E&S market, uh, in the past, people would call it like the Wild West, right? Like, oh, just anyone, any insurance carrier. But that's not happening. What I'm seeing is you have some of these what used to be admitted carriers, okay, now putting on a different hat, and they're in the E&S market. So the way what I'm describing is uh, these carriers will do what they have to do to be able to get the premium that they need, because California has been it's been kind of putting a lid on what they can charge, likely unfairly, but that's all a bunch of political things that needed to be handled at some point. But a lot of people in the past would not trust the E&S market. I tend to feel, and I want to get your opinion, that the E&S market is actually a very valid place to look, because when I look at the FAIR plan, I'm like, that is the worst place to go. And it feels like that's the only place that people are going to when they can't qualify. So I feel like the E&S market is uh, becoming, well, has improved tremendously in the last, 5-7 years. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I would say so. You are correct. So the E&S market kind of goes outside the governance, if you will, of the California Department of Insurance. So they can charge a little higher in premium and get what they think that would be appropriate for that location. It's not so much so that it's something called the Wild West because you can kind of get really, I would say, I don't want to use the word cute, but you can kind of get a little more sophisticated around the policy and what actually makes sense for that location. Now, when it comes to the FAIR plan, and I know your company actually does an amazing job at this, which is there's always hope, and hope usually comes in the form of that four-letter word that we hear a lot, IBHS,
Yeah.
which is the gold standard for mitigation and the gold standard for mitigation when it comes to insurance companies. And so really when it comes to understanding, where are you located first? Are you even going to have problems? Are you in the middle of a city where, even though you're in the state of California, everyone's going to want to insure you because you're not in a wildfire prone area, or are you in a really bad wildfire prone area? And that's where the hope comes in. If you're in a really bad wildfire prone area, you don't have to go to the California Fair Plan. There is mitigation stuff that you can do out there. And that's the whole point of what we're trying to drive as well. But we do it more on a technology basis.
Yes. Yes. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. So let me ask you, Paul, like, you spent 15 years plus fighting fire as a hotshot before moving into like the insurance risk mitigation space. Like, what does the insurance industry still not understand about wildfire behavior, in your opinion?
Yeah. So I think it's getting better from when I started within the insurance industry. I will say that it is getting better. But we're still not there yet. We really aren't there yet. And what we're doing here at Green Shield is actually leading the charge on a lot of different stuff like wildfire propagation modeling and actually forecasting where a fire is going to go. And we use really good partners to be able to do that. We're not the fire scientists in house, if you will, actually doing the propagation, but we're building products around that and building insurance expertise around that and burning real, like myself, firefighter expertise around that to be able to shape that in a way where it's actually digestible to the insurance market and scalable for the insurance market to be able to actually ingest something like that. But I would say the biggest problem when it comes to the insurance market and actually understand wildfire risk is it has to scale. And people don't really understand what that means. And what it means by scale is within sometimes seconds, I must know if this is a good risk or a bad risk. And
Right.
so that's where this starts becoming very difficult for a homeowner who's like, well, I don't understand. I trimmed my overhanging tree. I did all these things. And then I got a denial letter. I'm like, yeah, because they made that, they made that decision in like 20 seconds. I mean, it was really quick or sometimes a
Man,
couple minutes.
that's so interesting. Like, okay, So why do you say they make it so fast?
because they
Are
have to.
because they
Be-
have to.
Because they have to. So the difference is when it comes to like a homeowner or like a fire service, they spend their entire life at their house, or they spend their entire career in this location.
Right.
So I live in the city of Canyon Lake. So I'm just gonna use my fire department. So the Canyon Lake Fire Department that's here, they understand my city really, really well. And they spend their entire career here. And if you say, well, what happens if there's a fire over here in this bird sanctuary? They're going to go, oh, well, this is the plan of attack, and it shouldn't really do this much damage to the community because we've modeled it and we've done all this. That's a lot of time, a lot of effort just to figure out one location, one city. When it comes to the house, I'm a homeowner. I spend my time going around making sure. And I live in a wildfire prone area, so
Yeah, you do. Yes.
so I get the struggle everybody else does. But so I go around my house, I know all the like minuscule small things that I've done to harden my own property. But as an insurance carrier, I need to know this at scale. And what I mean by that is I may press a button and I need to know about, this location in Northern California or this location. And, especially, we're right now only in 2 states, but we are expanding in multiple other states. I mean, soon it's going to be, I need to press a button, know about Wyoming, press a button, know about, and actually, we actually give these analytics to insurance carriers. I need to press a button and I need to know about, I need to
Wow.
know about Colorado. I need to know about this spot in California, or I need to know about this spot in Oregon or Washington. You kind of name it. But I need to know it really, really quickly because I need to know if it goes into 3 buckets. One is immediately pass through and go
Okay.
straight into my book because it's a good property.
Okay.
The other one is going into refer to underwriting, where you might get an underwriting review. And the other one is denial, because we don't want to spend our time on the denial stuff. We don't want to spend our time on the stuff that doesn't make sense. And so you'll have carriers where you have to fill out all this information prior. So you have your broker go in and say, it's a wood shake roof, it's this, and you kind of name it. And then you push it through, and it's not people picking it apart. It's a big kind of tree system saying wood shake roof kickoff.
Oh
Like,
man. This
versus
whole time I thought my broker was having a 30-minute conversation with the underwriter about my
oh no.
house and everything.
Oh no.
And that's crazy. No, but I totally get this. But I never really considered like
So
how
so
fast
here
the
the thing
decision
is,
making.
so with our technology, I can tell you quantified every structure in the state of California, how much vegetation is around it within 100 feet, how much other structures is around it within 100 feet, what is the roof type, what is a roof condition, all from just aerial imagery. And that's just the aerial imagery. That's not the hazard mapping. That's not the ember fallout mapping. But here's the thing is all that's built in where I press a button and it's like milliseconds coming back and giving me all that information. And if I already built out all the rules engine behind that of what's our appetite, we know like that what exactly if this is going to meet our book or not. And if it's not going to meet our book, will we do a little bit of underwriting on it? Of course we will, because we do want to spend time with it. But when someone's ingesting, if you want to put this in perspective, when someone's ingesting, let's say, 2,000, 10,000 policies every, let's say, 2 weeks, a month, that's a lot of properties, and you only have so many underwriters. And so
Wow.
all this technology has to be at scale. And so
Yeah.
being able to capture that, that's why getting a certification, I'll give you an example, like IBHS is so important, is because there's a lookup system for IBHS and
Is there?
everybody knows everything what that means. And so, and so when that shows up and it says IBHS certified, what that is saying is there is no other mitigation we have to actually require on this property. It
Wow.
is that good.
Wow.
And we're able to do it in seconds.
Wow. That's amazing. And for you listeners, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety is IBHS. They are a massive research company, not only for wildfire risk, but for risk in general, in different climates. But they've done an amazing job. And we, Allied Disaster Defense, works directly with them. And I'm so proud, man. I'm so proud that we've worked with them in creating some of the standards. Like they were literally at my house years ago, and we're going through some of the details. And I happen to have the first wildfire prepared home plus designation in California, which I'm very proud of. But what's interesting is I gave that to State Farm years ago, right? And boom, I got insured right away. And I came from the fair plan, and I came out of it. Um, so I guess the question I have for you is, thank you for sharing that. I'm just wondering, is that still ongoing? Like if people are willing to do the work and make the investment to make their home more wildfire prepared, are the underwriters actually really paying attention to that? Like how much leverage do they have when they do that? Because look, that's the question people want to know. Like they're like, hey, great, I'm going to invest 10, 15, sometimes $20,000 plus to make my home more wildfire prepared to get to become insurable out of the fair plan, or just, better insurance. Is that a legitimate investment is what they're asking? And the question is like, we don't know who's going to do what, but what's your opinion in working in the industry so much as you do?
Yeah, I would say so. One, it 100% is
Okay.
still on the forefront of
Awesome.
mitigation. But I will say, there's enough carriers out there, including ourselves, where we see the designation and immediately it's getting put on the books. And the reason why is because we know what it means. We know what it means when it comes to mitigation. We know that, the 5 foot's already taken care of. We know the property's already been hardened. And we know the differences between base and we know the differences between the plus. You show up with a plus and it's like, well, this thing has everything. Um, you know, I'll give you an example. When it comes to IBHS plus home coming through our business, we don't even spend the time with it because of the fact that we already know it already has all the mitigation. There's nothing really more to force on the homeowner when it comes to understanding the mitigation because it's already there. But I do want to drive home a even finer point of scale.
Yeah.
And what I mean by scale is the reason why insurance carriers actually have a very difficult time when it comes to these large wildfires like the Eden fire, the Palisade fire, is because the machine is scaling. And what that means is that it's writing policies really quickly, it's denying policies really quickly. Yes, there is some underwriting and there is some stuff, but it's doing it very fast.
Okay.
And if you have a bunch of low risk all of a sudden burn down, that means one, you don't know what you're doing. That's really what it means. You don't know what you're doing. But two, you don't know how wrong you're actually getting it, and it's moving very fast. So you're eating
Ooh.
up all these policies that you thought were low, that you're putting low premiums on, and all of a sudden they all get wiped out. And so now you're scaling in the wrong sections. And so it has to scale. It has to scale
So
because
Paul,
yeah.
okay. Look, man, the machine must have broke. Okay, the machine must have, like, seriously, you got all this activity going on, and the machine's like, oh my god, I've made all these mistakes, right? And like, dang. So now it feels like it feels like the great reset, right? It feels like there's something significant that has to change, and maybe this is what the carriers have been working on for the past few years, is really trying to understand what are the categories of what they should be paying attention to. You believe that's true?
Yeah, the next big thing is conflagration risk. So now that everybody kind of understands that conflagration
Okay,
is
let's unpack
is
that a little
a
bit.
big thing.
Because look at the other question I was going to ask you is like, hey, cool, like, besides the wildfire risk, what other decision making criteria is the insurance company using outside of that? And I think the conflagration risk, really, I think people need to understand that, because it's individual to the carrier. But maybe you could expand on that and what that looks like.
Yeah, so there's some really good research coming out on conflagration risk, and actually even models coming out for conflagration risk. We even, some of our models are actually starting to absorb conflagration risk because there's a way to model those things now. It is now becoming a reality. So what that means, and kind of for the listeners, it kind of breaks this down a little more simpler, is that there is fuel models right now for vegetation. meaning that there is grass one, which is like a short grass, if you will. There's different timbers and different stuff. But the problem is, as soon as it hits structures, there's not really a fuel model, even though structures become fuel. There's not a fuel model for structures. So it gets painted the same way you would paint a street, non-burnable. The whole thing's non-burnable. It's like asphalt. And so you have the carriers kind of do like a nice buffer outside of this and say, okay, this far out is going to be moderate risk, this far out it's going to be low risk, and this far out it's going to be no risk. And I want to ride in the no risk, I'm going to ride in the low risk. And then all of a sudden all the low risk burns down because they didn't realize that the roads were aligned all the way to the ocean in the Palisades. I mean, that's really kind of what happens. Or the Eden fire, which to be honest, it's very difficult to even see that from a firefighter point of view, to just know that was going to happen. Do I know there's risks there? Sure. But did I know the whole city was going to go up? No, I didn't know the whole city was going to go up. And so then now there's like, okay, well, how do we put a fuel model or a model type on top of a structure and be able to actually see how far in, does the roads align correctly? Does the actual structures align correctly from a conflagration risk? If this one ignites, then this one ignites, and kind of it goes on and on and on. So it's different than ember fallout. And so I know everyone's like, oh, ember's the enemy, if you will, and it's gonna land on things and it's going to ignite things on fire. It does. But what we're actually seeing a lot of the times is that one home will ignite, and it's not 90% of embers are burning down properties. It's, those embers are igniting properties, and then that property is wiping out the whole block. And that's not an ember fallout issue. That is a conflagration risk issue. And so now that, the insurance carrier understand there's a blind spot there. And so there's quite a bit of tools and different models and different ways that everyone's kind of starting to think about conflagration risk. To really kind of refocus our wildfire models, because wildfire models in general, I talked about this the last time where I talked to you, which is they're very immature compared to other models within the industry. So we're still figuring it out. We're still doing our best to kind of throw the best technology at it to actually really see what would unfold within those areas. But no one's got it perfect yet. No one's got it so right. We're going to say, this structure here is going to be the one that is going to burn down. That's very difficult to do with the ever-changing kind of wildfire environment, if you will.
Paul, we deployed a handful of crews during the Palisades, and when you're talking about a home, igniting and then just going on to the next home, we actually have footage. My guys were spraying a home, the perimeter of the vegetation, and the wind's blowing everywhere, and like there are palm trees, like everything's igniting, and everyone's seen the footages. But we have footage, and I'll try to remind Vincent to plug this in, where there's a home literally on fire, and then it just leans over and just ignites the next one, and it's like there's so much. You're right? There's so much fuel there. It's interesting that the vegetation is considered fuel, the street is not, and the house is considered a street. Like that's really that's gonna
It's all
change.
non-burnable. It's just a big gray area. This is not
It's
burnable.
it's crazy. And here's what I want to make sure that the listeners hear too is that yes, you might have a Class A fire rated roof, might be tile, you might have stucco outside, and but if you have an ignition near the home, and this is why the 5 feet from your home is so critical, if you have an ignition there, it really becomes the glass that becomes the sensitive weakness of the home, and they're dual pane, and that's great, but there's enough radiant heat, and then in some cases enough flames that are just going to attack the glass. And as soon as that happens, you got the drapes, the couches, the drywalls on fire, and it's out of control. Then the house is gone. And so a lot of this research that's been done is really, really critical for all of us to really heed the warning and understand that when we're driving up to our home, if we see vegetation that's within 5 feet of the home, look at that as a very vulnerable place of where embers can ignite and begin to gather, and then they cause their own little bonfire. Next thing you know, we got a full-blown problem. So Paul, let me ask you, because I feel like, so sometimes IBHS standards might be a little too much for a homeowner, where they're like, hey,
Yeah.
they might have wood siding, right? And so now they have to make this massive investment. They might have a roof that's not Class A fire rated. That's another massive investment. But besides going to be and getting an IBHS certification, okay, are there other things that the homeowners, let me put it this way. What are the three things you think the homeowner should be doing to help themselves make their home more insurable? Number one. Number two, if they don't have an IBHS certification, what do insurance companies look for that doesn't necessarily fall within IBHS certification, but they still might push it through?
Yeah. So it starts with defensible space. And so it really does start with defensible space. So if when it comes to structures itself, IBHS even put out a big study which showed that it increases the risk something like 80 to 100% if it has poor defensible space. We did a big study, and actually we even had it increases the risk 120. The exact number is 124 percent more likely to receive damage in a wildfire if it has poor defensible space, than if it didn't have any defensible space. Well, then it's just more likely to just burn to the ground, if you will. So defensible space is really important. The issue that we have. So my background. So I'm also an arborist. So I'm arborist. I'm also a
You're
wildfire.
also an arborist?
Yeah, I'm also an
Awesome,
arborist.
love it. Love
so
it. Love it.
so so and then when it comes to I'm also a wildfire risk reduction qualified arborist. And really the big thing about that is really understanding defensible space, but also not all vegetation is created equal. And so that's where you would say, how important is IBHS? Very important, but is there some things that we can start kind of threading the needle and still get to the finish line of getting insurance? No Italian cypresses are going to get hit really hard. Eucalyptuses are going to get hit really hard. Juniper plants are going to get hit really hard. Juniper trees are going to get hit really hard.
Oh,
All these really bad types of vegetation are going to get hard. What doesn't get hit hard is like succulents. That doesn't get hard. No insurance carrier usually looks at the succulents and says, "Hey, this is a very bad deal. You have ice plant and it's going to burn down your
right.
structure." That's not what they do. Um, but in order for you to get certain certifications, because there's so many different types of vegetations and so many different types of if you will if you will you know trees, vegetation, plants, you kind of name it. IBHS kind of blanketed, hey, anything combustible. And if it's a plant, it's combustible. So therefore, anything combustible within that 5 foot area, which is the golden standard, is like, how do you
Yeah.
make sure it's perfect? But know that insurance carriers do look at other things. And I would say the most important thing, I would say that most insurance carriers are becoming very wise about is the 0 to 5 foot area around the structure. They're becoming very wise that that is going to be the one that may take out the structure. And so it is a team effort sometimes. And the sad part is sometimes, even though it should be in your control, it feels like it's outside your control because your neighbor is what's the biggest cause of you not getting
Ooh,
insurance.
yes.
I've seen it plenty of times where the neighbor is the reason why that homeowner is not getting insurance, and
Ooh,
that's because of the fact that you look at the neighbor and the neighbor surrounded you with Italian cypresses, because that's their hedge, and different people's hedges to block you. And now when an insurance carrier looks at you from aerial imagery, those trees are very easy to spot. They look like sticks. They're the only ones that look that way, and they're like, nope, not that property. Um,
oh,
and so
man.
that's yeah. So the answer to what you're asking, is there other things they can do? Sure, but remember, it must be scalable. And so when it starts becoming scalable, you're hoping that that insurance carrier is going to spend time with you and
Ooh,
spend time on your property to figure out the things that you did. And most of the time, it works if you're ready in house, meaning that you already have insurance and they're asking you to do things. Because now you're dealing with the loss control part of the business, not the underwriters. Really, there's going to be a loss control person on the other end trying to make sure that that gets done. But before you get in the door, you have to check all the boxes, and it has to happen at scale. It has to happen really quickly. And if you don't have, if you don't have something to say that you've done a really good job that they can ingest in sometimes, seconds, sometimes minutes, then you might miss the boat.
I think one of the bigger things that resonate with me today, Paul, in our conversation is that um, the underwriting or the approval process um, happens at in seconds, you know, and it's kind of a bummer when you think about it. Like, darn, you know, if you don't have an IBHS certification, um, I question myself, have I done enough, right? Maybe I have cleared 0 to 5 and I've installed ember resistant vents. Um, Man, is the carrier gonna see that, in my favor, or are they not? And then I think about how what you're saying is like the approval process happens in seconds. It's like, dang. The question I have for you is, are we getting to a place where, like, similar to a flood zone, right? Are we going to have like wildfire scores that are going to eventually like become a standard in the industry, do you think? Or what do you see coming?
Oh
Um,
yeah, no, when it comes to, even when it comes to, what we're doing, we look at the structure risk, we look at the parcel risk, and depending on how much vegetation is within their quantified 100 feet defensible space, how many other buildings are in their quantified 100 feet defensible space. What about the structure? That's very mitigation based. That's very at the structure base. And then you have the large heat maps that are kind of going out. And so we are trying to get smarter, and we are getting smarter when it comes to picking up the smaller things as fast as possible. Um, Now, it's not so much, there is an application that your broker's filling out that says what your roof is and what your windows are and all that other stuff that they need in order to actually make their decision. But if you're thinking that, I just need to do a few things and then give it to my broker and now I'm going to get insurance, very difficult to, very, very, very difficult to actually say that story because that's all subjective. I mean, to kind of put this in
yeah.
perspective, the HOA, the city, the county, the insurance companies, NFPA, IBHS, we all have different standards. It is so subjective. It is very subjective. Some people care about more about one thing than the others. And so it's very, very subjective. So how do you get past the subjectiveness? It's when we start standardizing things. And if there's a standard and you say, I meet standard, now it's no longer subjective. Now I know
Mm,
exactly everything that you've done. I don't have to worry about if you're a wildfire expert. The reason why I don't have to worry about if you're a wildfire expert is because I know you took care of your 0 to 5 when you have IBHS. You may have thought the most important thing for you to cut down was your oak tree in your front yard.
oh,
And you're gonna leave bark mulch around your property, you're gonna do all this other stuff, but you're like, "You know what? I'm not getting insurance. This oak tree has to go." And that oak tree is fire resistant. You should probably have
yep.
not put it down in the first place.
Oh,
And that's where that subjective comes in, where you're just making stuff up to try to make the insurance carriers believe that you're doing a good job. And the reality is you need experts. You need
you
experts
need
to come to your
experts, man.
property and tell you what to do. And it has to be very standardized process because we care about standards.
Love it. Love it. And so Paul, you guys are in the tech and you and I work together in help people, like, for us, boots on the ground actually doing the work. But let me ask you, like, once you you know let's just say that a homeowner gets a recommendation from your firm that says, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, here's the recommendations that you probably should do," and it's months before renewal, so they have plenty of runway to get some stuff done. Like, what do you think the biggest barrier is for people that don't make these improvements? What do you what's happening, or what conversations are they coming back to you with, or do you know?
Yeah, so sometimes it's aesthetics. Um,
Mm,
they care too much about their properties, and the way that they look, and to be honest, I get it. It's their safe place. We
right.
talk about it, or at least I talk about it like it's a business transaction. Like, "Oh, if they just do X, Y, and Z, this is gonna be great." And the reality is I'm talking about cutting down their their grandfather's, tree that he planted there before he died.
You're just heartless, Paul.
Yeah,
You're heartless,
apparently.
man, okay?
No, no,
But
but
it's true, man, yeah.
or I'm asking them to, change out the siding of a structure, that is, really near and dear to them, or I'm asking them to do something that they just don't think is pretty. And so it's their home. That's they live in it. They are there all the time. They come home to it every day. It's their sanctuary. And I'm asking them to completely change the look of it. I mean, if you look at some of these homes, and I'll use like Rancho Santa Fe. You look at some of these homes in Rancho Santa Fe, it looks beautiful. There's succulents everywhere. There's trees. There's plants everywhere. Making an IBHS home in Rancho Santa Fe would be like you bring in a dump truck to get rid of that much vegetation.
Oh,
A
man.
and it is not going to be that Spanish look anymore. It is going to look very modern after you're done with it, because you got rid of everything within the 5-foot area. And there's still stuff you can do, but it just doesn't have that same look and feel. That is probably the biggest obstacle to actually overcome. But there's another kind of piece to this, and I always think about it when anybody's giving, either us a hard time or just anybody a hard time about wildfire mitigation. But the other option, your house might not be there anymore. And if you like it that much, well, then wouldn't you want to protect it from the environment that you actually live in? It's
Mm,
almost it's almost like if you have a roof leak, are you not going to go fix it? Even though it means, doing some maintenance. Because the reality is when a fire happens, it's going to burn down the entire structure. It's going to take all your belongings and all your sentimentals with it. And that's what you're looking at. And it's interesting because we talked about this before. Standards for earthquake are there, standards for floods are there, standards for all this other stuff are there, but people have a hard time digesting standards for wildfire. Um, because it's not aesthetically pleasing. And the reality is it might not be aesthetically pleasing, but for where your house is located, it kind of needs it in order to not only protect your property, but probably your neighbor's property as well.
mm, mm. Man, Paul, you touched on some good things, man. I really do feel like this drives a message home and probably resonates with homeowners and all of us who are listening, whether we're in the fire service or in politics or just a regular homeowner. Like um it's interesting because when I decided I'm gonna become IBHS compliant, uh I really I really do enjoy my house, my home and we'd only been there for about 4 years when that took place. But I pulled out plants, we pulled out shrubs, and my wife was like, "Okay, what are we gonna do now?" I'm like, "Babe, I don't know. Let's just pull stuff out. We'll figure it out." And I think that's the piece that's missing sometimes is like you almost have to create the vision, right, before you start pulling things out. In my case, I'm like, "Look, we're on a hillside. Like, it's not a matter of if, it's going to come
Oh
our
yeah.
way. There's no question, right? So let's not give the the advantage to the embers that are flying around, right? Um and one of the things that I ended up doing, and I just did it this weekend, is on my hillside, I spend $1,700 this weekend to have my guys just really like remove a bunch of shrubs. And but I'm also conscious enough, and this goes back to something you said earlier about our neighbors. I'm conscious enough to realize that if my neighbor's home goes down, like I am super vulnerable. And so invested my money with my guys to trim and actually remove uh, a lot of vegetation on his hillside just to space things out more.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that, because I have the understanding of that, um, I'm willing to make that investment to make my home safer because you're right, Paul. I don't think we put ourselves in a position enough to really think about and consider what happens after the fire if our house is damaged and it goes down. Like you think about, you grab whatever you can, you leave, and you come back, and there's rubble. and now what, right? Like there's so many things in customers that we're dealing with even still now from the Palisades. They're still not back, and they won't be back in their homes for years, or if they ever decide to go back. And if you have children, like they're likely going to a different school because in Palisades a couple schools burnt down, and so like there's so many things that can happen that change your life, um, that I don't think we spend enough time really thinking about the aftermath, because I think it could impact the things that we do now.
Yeah. So some of the things that I will say that I think about because I'm on the insurance side of the business and also I'm dealing with a lot of technology is sometimes stats come out and it just like you look at those stats and you go, it's so impactful that you think, man, how is this not the way of life within the area of California? That mitigation is just a way of life. Like that's just the way we view it. I'll give you one of the stats. One of the stats was in the last 100 years, all 50% of all chaparral has burned in general in a wildfire. And so,
Wow.
like, and so immediately I'm like, "Man, that's huge." And then the next thought in my head was like, "Man, that means 50% of chaparral is still out there that haven't burned." That's a
Exactly.
really bad
That's right.
spot. But, we have a product called, wildfire reoccurrence. And so what that means is it tracks the frequency of wildfires. So how often a wildfire happens in this location, that is at least 2,000 acres large. And it will actually give you the cycle. Every 10 years, you're going to have at least a 2,000 acre fire, or every 20 years, you're going to have a 2,000 acre fire. But it also maps it out towards vegetation regrowth. And so it doesn't mean that every 10 years, you're going to have a wildfire in this location. For sure. It means that that's usually the frequency that the fire actually happens. But given the surrounding vegetation, it could happen again, actually quite frequently. I'll give you an example, since we've been talking about it so much, like the Palisades. You could
Yeah.
go light those hillsides on fire today. Like vegetation came back. It
You know what's crazy, Paul? You're right, man. Because look at, I thought, okay, this is going to burn. Heck, this whole place is going to be insurable for years to come. Whoa, the vegetation
is
is
back.
growing. It is back. Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry. Continue.
But yeah, so when that vegetation burned, it didn't. The last time it burned was 1978, which was the Mandeville fire. And it had an enormous amount of regrowth. And the fire behavior triangle says, the weather was right, if you will, the topography, it has the microsystems and it has the, Santa Ana winds and all that other stuff. And that the last one, which is the vegetation, keeps getting worse. So you just get worse and worse behavior. And so 1978, Mandeville fire happened, burned up that area, and it just continued to grow back till it was dramatic. But it may not be very dramatic today if it were to burn, but it will burn the entire hillside on another Santa Ana wind event area because it's chaparral. It's meant to burn. It is just in chaparral for the listeners. That is a group of vegetation. You have chamise, you have manzanita, you have different types of vegetation in it, which we will call chaparral, but very oily, very fragrant, very dead,
Yeah.
and that stuff just burns really well. And so it is amazing that I kind of look at these stats and I go, okay, so the frequency within, let's say, that area is 20 years. Every 20 years, it's going to burn. And then I'm looking at it again and going, but all chaparral burns, quite frequently. And in fact, it could burn again today and have a 2,000 acre fire. I was actually looking at it. It can have a 2,000 acre fire in that location again, says the model. And I looked, and so I immediately went to like Street View, and I was like, nope, it definitely can burn again. And so that's the world we live in. So why is it so difficult, I would say, for us to start adopting these standards as in this is just where I live? It's the same. It's almost like building a house not to earthquake code and then
Mhm.
and then living in it because no, because the house is going to fall on you one day. But we don't actually have that lens for wildfire.
Interesting. Interesting. And I think it's things are changing, as like a freight train. Things are happening, things are changing, and I think we all have to be ready, um, to make the investment. It's not the insurance company's responsibility, anymore, right? Because I remember being in the disaster restoration business for 30 plus years. You hear the homeowners saying, "Well, it's their responsibility." This is our responsibility, 100%. I think the faster that we take ownership of it, the better things will get. But let me ask you as we finish up here, Paul, in your opinion, like what makes you, I'm assuming you're confident, what makes you confident that homes in the, wildfire risk areas are gonna become more insurable in the future? Do you see us getting better, or do you see this still being so fractional and hard as far
Yeah.
as the insurance market?
Yeah. So I can give you, I'll give you the reality, which is not a clear cut answer, but I'm going to give you the reality. The reality is as long as we don't burn down cities, we will continue to have short term memory, and the insurance market will start to come back a little bit. And as soon as we burn down 5 more cities, the insurance market's going to upend and try to refigure it all out. And so it's very up and down. It's never, if you will, oh, we're all getting better. When we get, and I've said this on the last time we talked, and I'll say it again. When a huge wildfire hits a city and doesn't burn it down, and that happens over and over and over and over again, insurance companies are going to come back in waves. And the reason why is because now you're protecting your investment, and therefore you're protecting the insurance company's investment. Um, Insurance companies look at wildfire as, I don't know if you know this. So almost on every different, you kind of name it, catastrophic event, there's always like, well, how much of the TIV will I lose? So how much of the total insurable value of this structure will I lose? And they'll do, for hospitals, they do like, well, if there's a fire on the first floor, how will it get to the second floor? And oh, we can calculate it, how far the distance is from this, and you kind of name it. But with wildfire, it's always everything. It's always the total insurable value
Wow.
is if it catches on fire, it's a loss. There is no helping it. And so they are looking at it as an all or nothing. Either they did everything in their control to not light the deck on fire, to not light the attic space on fire, to not light, you kind of name it, on fire. And if one of those things light, the insurance companies think about it as the whole thing goes away. And that is their mindset when they're writing these risks. So when you have these large wildfires hit and they don't burn down a city, that means that the whole city was built to a standard that they can believe in. And that's when the insurance industry will actually start coming back in waves. Now, I will say it's starting to soften. The market is starting to soften today. We're starting to see more carriers kind of, if you will, play in the market. We're playing in the market now. So now we're insuring homes in the market. We're insuring homes in California and Colorado. So you have other insurance companies actually coming in, and insuring in the ENS area. Do I think it's going to swing back to the admitted market? I don't know about that. I could see it continuing to kind of follow the path of pushing more into the ENS market, just because of the premium dollars that you would need to be able to insure somebody in the middle of the woods. But yeah.
Got it. Paul, I gotta say, the way you described it makes a lot of sense, man. Makes a lot of sense because um, uh, there is short-term memory everywhere, right? And even in business with the carriers. So, but as long as we're not burning down cities consistently, and cities are able to survive in time after time after time, I can see how things can get better. That's awesome. Now, Paul, if people want to contact you or people want to talk about, maybe with their broker about, hey, how they can get in touch with your firm to see if you guys can help them with insurability, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, so one, talk to your broker about Green Shield. So talk to your broker of if they are actually with us. We work through brokers, so it's not like you come straight to us and pick up the phone and call Green Shield. So we
Yep.
do work for brokers. One of our products out there is also the insurable product. We work with real estate agents to see the insurability of the property itself. But there's also an avenue to get to one of our brokers. So if you're looking at buying a home and you are utilizing an agent, you can also have that agent kind of look at, if you will, the insurability report, if you will, of our product. Also give you an estimate of how much the insurance will actually cost you for that home. It is an estimate, so take it with it is an estimate, but it's a pretty good estimate of how much insurance is going to cost you if you actually get that home. And then if you do want to move forward, there's a path in. That's what we find a lot is that when people buy and sell homes, that's usually when they start changing their carriers, is because you got to go out there and you got to find a carrier.
Boom. Boom. Awesome. Paul, is there anything, my friend, that you want to share with the audience before we say our goodbyes here, my brother?
Last is just, really appreciate you having me, OP. The stuff that you're doing, the stuff that your company is doing is absolutely, phenomenal. So I do appreciate being on the podcast. I do appreciate, what your company in general is doing. So it's really cool that we're able to do this. Thank you.
That's all for this episode of All Things Wildfire. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to our show and follow us on social media to stay up to date on all things wildfire. And as always, thanks for listening.